John Ganz, When the Clock Broke, Con Men, Conspiracists, and How America Cracked Up in the Early 1990s. In When the Clock Broke, Con Men, Conspiracists, and How America Cracked Up in the Early 1990s, by John Ganz, readers are invited to explore a tumultuous era in American politics filled with rising populism and shifting ideologies. This book unearths the complex landscape of the early 90s through the political ascension of controversial figures like David Duke and Pat Buchanan, who capitalized on racial and economic tensions. Through the lives and strategies of these political players, Ganz highlights a nation grappling with loss of faith in traditional institutions, growing economic disparities, and cultural upheavals. Whether detailing the rise of conservative media personalities like Rush Limbaugh or the tumult of the 1992 elections featuring rivals like Ross Perot and Bill Clinton, the book provides a gripping analysis of how changing societal values and political disillusionment opened doors for radical ideologies and paved the way for today's polarized climate.
Shadows in the Bayou. In the early 1990s, the murky political waters of Louisiana witnessed an unexpected figure rising to prominence, David Duke, a former leader of the Ku Klux Klan and neo-Nazi, who astounded many by winning a state legislative seat despite significant opposition. Louisiana, with its tense racial, religious, and economic mix, proved to be fertile ground for Duke's inflammatory rhetoric. The state's history, peppered with populist figures like Huey P. Long, provided Duke with a landscape ripe for his message of racial dissatisfaction, particularly among white residents grappling with economic pressures and societal change. Duke attempted to ride this wave further when he ran for governor in 1991, facing off against Edwin Edwards, a seasoned politician tainted by scandal. While Duke ultimately lost, capturing 55% of the white vote indicated a profound frustration among these voters, reflecting a broader disillusionment within America's white middle class plagued by economic hardship and eroded trust in political institutions. This period marked a tumultuous chapter for the Republican Party as internal tensions bubbled over. The debate surrounding the Civil Rights Act of 1990 saw Democrats challenge the party to define its identity, whether aligned with Abraham Lincoln's ideals or David Duke's radical vision. Duke claimed influence over President Bush's decision to veto the act, further shaking the party's foundation. Influential voices like Samuel T. Francis, an editorial force at the Washington Times, viewed Duke's appeal as emblematic of a brewing political shift. Francis believed the country's backbone lay with the white, lower middle class, whom he dubbed the Middle American Radicals, or MARS, who were disillusioned with the elite and burdened by minority-supporting policies. As the decade progressed, a new conservative faction emerged, the Paleoconservatives. Unlike their neoconservative counterparts, like George H. W. Bush, who championed democracy and global cooperation, Paleoconservatives rejected the post-war liberal order. Figures like Francis viewed this era as a corrupt departure from traditional American values, with Duke's rise signaling a potential revolution against entrenched powers. Thus, the 1990s opened with the neoconservative-paleoconservative divide, hinting at shifting tides in American political dynamics and the persistent undercurrents of extremism lurking beneath the surface. Rise of right-wing populism. During the lead-up to the 1992 election, George H. W. Bush found himself in increasingly troubled waters. The nation grappled with a faltering economy, marked by a downturn, with woes originating from the deregulation of the savings and loan industry during the Reagan years. Banks began failing at an alarming rate, unemployment rose sharply, and the combined effect of defense cutbacks post-Cold War and industrial automation added to the economic strain. Bush's approval ratings, once soaring at 89% post-Gulf War, now plummeted to less than 50%, revealing a deep-seated public disapproval of his economic strategies. This discontent paved the way for internal party challengers, foremost among them Pat Buchanan, a seasoned politico whose career spanned back to Nixon's administration. Buchanan declared his candidacy for the Republican nomination, positioning himself as a nationalist alternative to Bush. He capitalized on the disillusionment articulated by Sam Francis in the Mars, and his message resonated with a restless populace eager for change. Buchanan's campaign adeptly utilized the media, showcasing his aptitude for connecting with everyday Americans. His rhetoric cut through as he railed against the elites and championed a new brand of nationalism that prioritized America above all else. His positioning offered a stark contrast to Bush, minus the negative connotations tied to figures like Duke, distancing from extreme associations with the KKK and neo-Nazi movements. With this approach, Buchanan attracted a diverse coalition of disenchanted conservatives and libertarians, united under a banner of combative right-wing populism. The unexpected unity between conservatives and libertarians was a testament to Buchanan's influence, as he spearheaded a call for a radical shift away from establishment politics. This emerging conservatism was bolder and more aggressive, fueled by anger and a perceived betrayal of American values. It was not merely about limiting government's role but seizing control to shield against perceived threats to national identity. As the 1992 election drew near, Buchanan's ideology was not merely a campaign strategy but a harbinger of a significant political shift. His populist rhetoric planted seeds of discord and division, foreshadowing the political landscape's evolution and the challenges that would define American politics in subsequent decades. The era marked a turning point, laying the groundwork for the populist movements that followed, fundamentally reshaping the political discourse. Voices of Discontent. Rush Limbaugh's journey from a shy Missouri boy to a dominant force in conservative talk radio illustrates the power of transformation. In the 1970s, multiple firings could not deter him, instead, they fueled his determination. It wasn't until the mid-80s in Sacramento that Limbaugh found his stride, crafting a new vision for the Republican Party. Unlike the stable image his father once embodied, Limbaugh's GOP harnessed anger and alienation, mirroring his personal struggles. His radio show spoke to millions who felt cast aside, offering them a powerful platform amidst a backdrop of societal disillusionment and declining traditional values. This new style of media disrupted the American political landscape, contributing to a wave of populism. Another figure who tapped into this growing discontent was Ross Perot. A man of contrasts, Perot appeared to shun the image-centric culture while expertly using it to his advantage. Born in Texarkana, Texas, and shaped by his military background and entrepreneurial success, Perot cultivated a captivating public persona, partly through platforms like the Larry King Live Show. Dubbed a modern-day folk hero, he charmed a diverse base with a blend of nostalgia and ambitious vision. By June 1992, Perot's campaign, rich in homespun yet fiery rhetoric, captured widespread attention, even surpassing President George H.W. Bush and Bill Clinton in polls. Both Limbaugh and Perot captured the pulse of a society yearning for change. Where Limbaugh's voice raged against the alienation, Perot's appeal lay in offering a nostalgic narrative that promised a secure future. Together, they mirrored a nation's hope and frustration, challenging political norms and reshaping the media landscape. Fault lines of inequality. In the early 1990s, America grappled with expanding economic inequality, setting the stage for a nation simmering with discontent and distrust towards political leaders. By 1992, the wealthiest Americans had enjoyed a significant increase in income, contrasting starkly with the stagnation facing the average family and the declining earnings of the poorest. Feeling ignored and frustrated, many turned their ears to populist firebrands like Pat Buchanan, who harnessed their resentment with a mix of fiery rhetoric and misplaced patriotism. Yet, his credibility faltered when his conspicuous consumption conflicted with his nationalist messages, leading union workers to see through his facade. Part of Buchanan's appeal stemmed from scapegoating Japan amidst national economic anxiety. Past policies had facilitated a wave of Japanese investment in American real estate, which boomed and then crashed, particularly destabilizing regions like Southern California. However, this xenophobic narrative indirectly spurred a rise in anti-Asian hate crimes, laying bare the dangerous consequences of nationalist fervor. California, particularly Los Angeles, found itself at a boiling point. The simmering racial tensions ignited when George Holliday recorded a brutal act of police violence against Rodney King, a black motorist, by LAPD officers. This footage shocked the nation, prompting investigations that unveiled a history of systemic racism within the LAPD under the leadership of Chief Daryl Gates. Despite evidence of excessive force and racial targeting, entrenched power dynamics shielded Gates from accountability. The acquittal of the officers involved in the Rodney King beating underscored a deep fissure in American justice, resulting in an eruption of anger and frustration. This culminated in the Los Angeles unrest on April 29, 1992, marking one of the most significant urban uprisings in American history, driven by the collective demand for justice and equality. Sparks of a cultural clash. In the turbulent aftermath of the LA riots, Pat Buchanan aimed to ignite fear, advocating for stringent measures and proposing a wall to curb illegal immigration. Despite his efforts, his influence waned as his primary campaign struggled, leaving him desperate to push President Bush further rightward. Meanwhile, Ross Perot emerged as a surprisingly strong contender, captivating a diverse range of voters, especially in California, where he topped the polls. The Bush campaign was already floundering and was further burdened by Vice President Dan Quayle's controversial stance, which blamed single parenthood and the TV show Murphy Brown for contributing to the unrest. This perspective showcased a larger conservative critique of perceived liberal permissiveness eroding traditional values. However, the popular TV show's continued media spotlight posed problems for the campaign, as others distanced themselves from Quayle's views. In contrast, Bill Clinton faced his own set of challenges, struggling to connect with the electorate due to his connections with elite circles and reputational issues from past controversies. Despite clinching the Democratic nomination, his appeal to populist voters remained lackluster. However, a seismic shift occurred as Perot's campaign wavered, his refusal to articulate concrete policies and erratic behavior, including a notorious outburst at an NPR reporter, raised doubts. Suddenly, Perot exited the race, citing Republican smear tactics. This withdrawal galvanized Clinton's campaign, which quickly rallied to court Perot's disillusioned supporters, consolidate the African American vote and attempt to recapture the middle ground, all amidst the backdrop of the LA riots. Both parties were entwined in the nascent battles of the cultural wars, with rap music taking center stage as a scapegoat for societal ills. Buchanan's speeches lambasted rap, attributing it to a decay of American values, a viewpoint echoed by the media. Sensing an opportunity, Clinton distanced himself from such cultural elements by censuring the provocative rapper Sister Souljah, a strategic move that endeared him to specific voter segments. As summer 1992 unfolded, the Republican Party grappled with internal discord, climaxing in Buchanan's primetime address at the Republican National Convention. His ominous declaration of a cultural war for America's soul captivated attendees but left party leaders, including Ronald Reagan, feeling uneasy about the extremist undertones. This episode revealed a growing rift within the party and a broader national unease, emblematic of the discontent and unpredictability that characterized the 1992 election landscape. Shadows of power. In a nation that immortalizes gangsters on stage and screen, it's intriguing how figures like John Gotti, the notorious Gambino boss, garner public sympathy even while standing trial. In early 1992, a fervent crowd surrounded Brooklyn's U.S. District Court, waving American flags and denouncing the government, laying bare the deep divisions running through the city. This period was marked by acute racial tensions ignited by incidents such as the tragic killing of Yusuf Hawkins, a black teen, in the Italian-dominated Bensonhurst, and further exacerbated by the Crown Heights riots. These riots, triggered by a deadly car accident involving a Hasidic driver and a young black boy, spiraled into violence against Jewish individuals and their properties, tagging them as America's first pogrom. The chaos claimed the life of a Holocaust survivor, driven to despair. David Dinkins, then New York City's first black mayor, stood at the center of criticism from all quarters during these volatile times. His tenure faced yet another wave of disorder, this time from an unexpected source, an army of 10,000 off-duty police officers. Incited by Rudy Giuliani, a fiery political aspirant and ex-U.S. attorney famed for jailing mobsters, this turbulent protest saw participants hurling racial epithets and engaging in violence. Giuliani, known for his confrontational tactics and aggressive discourse, resonated with a city hungry for decisive leadership, earning the moniker, the human scream machine. The tumult of the early 90s unearthed a desire for authority akin to what was portrayed by the Corleones in The Godfather. Figures like Giuliani were seen as embodying the Machiavellian resolve and force deemed necessary to preserve America's cultural fabric. As established conservative ideologies faltered, figures like Sam Francis and libertarian thinker Murray Rothbard entertained the notion that democracy might not suffice. Instead, they pondered whether America should emulate the strong-handed, pragmatic governance of gangster chieftains, seeing them as symbols of hope. While Rothbard critiqued the lawlessness he perceived as liberalism run amok, both he and Francis found themselves drawn to the unwavering might represented by iconic mobsters. Amidst societal discord, perhaps the country craved something closer to the iron-willed leadership of a Don Corleone. 1992's pivotal shift. As the race for the 1992 presidency gained momentum, Bill Clinton's campaign zeroed in on the theme of economic troubles, wielding it as a weapon against President George H.W. Bush. Clinton strategist James Carville's famous mantra, "The economy, stupid," focused the campaign's energy, painting Bush not as a preserver but as a destroyer of the American middle class that Truman once built. As the nation grappled with stark headlines of California's bankruptcy, rising poverty, and widespread job losses, Clinton's message resonated. Ross Perot's re-entry into the race added another layer of complexity. Through a costly media campaign spending $24 million in just 2 weeks, Perot broadcasted his economic vision. Despite the massive TV viewership his infomercials drew, the plan lacked clarity, leaving questions about who would bear the challenges he proposed. Concurrently, the historical specter of the Iran-Contra scandal returned to haunt Bush. The testimony of Caspar Weinberger, Bush's former Secretary of Defense, linked Bush to lies about the affair, cementing his image as emblematic of a deceitful establishment. Clinton seized upon these vulnerabilities and emerged victorious with 43% of the popular vote, marking a significant shift with the highest third-party support since 1912, as Perot captured 18.9%. Yet the economic dilemma was more than just a political talking point. It reflected deeper societal and cultural undercurrents. In reaction to the results, conservative commentator Sam Francis called for a cultural overhaul, inspired not by political structures, but by ideas borrowed from Antonio Gramsci. Francis advocated for a grassroots revolution to construct a conservative counterculture, challenging liberal hegemony. He envisioned mobilizing followers around potent societal issues, potentially transforming this momentum into a formidable national movement. Yet, envisioning who might drive such a cause remained murky. In a post-election conversation with architect Philip Johnson, Donald Trump, then contemplating changes to his Atlantic City casino, drew a comparison to a mafioso, echoing Francis's vision not of a sophisticated Godfather figure, but rather one more akin to Goodfellas. Thus, the 1992 election was not solely about political victory. It marked a turning point, signaling shifting tides in American cultural and political identitarian battles, leaving in its wake questions about leadership and the future of American conservatism.
Ganz's exploration of early 1990s America in When the Clock Broke offers vivid insights into a pivotal period of ideological ferment and its enduring impacts. Throughout this narrative, we witness a fragmented political landscape rife with economic challenges and cultural conflicts. Figures like David Duke and Pat Buchanan emerge as key players, channeling the frustrations of a disillusioned white middle class. The book shows how these political mavericks capitalized on prevailing discontent, utilizing media platforms to reshape American politics. As economic inequities deepened and societal tensions erupted, the seeds of modern political polarization were sown, evidenced by the tumultuous 1992 election. Ultimately, Ganz underscores how the dialogues and disputes of this era echo through to today, urging a reflection on the forces that continue to shape America's political destiny.